Hello, I'm Anika from Made to Sew. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to do a shoulder adjustment, be that a narrow or wide shoulder adjustment. I'm going to be talking through two different techniques. One is for a minor adjustment and one is for a more major adjustment. So how do you know if you need to do a shoulder adjustment? Of course, it's best to make a sample. Check the fit of your sample garment. How is the shoulder positioned on your body? If the shoulder seam is hanging off the shoulder, then you probably need to do a narrow adjustment. If you're getting pull lines or it feels too tight over the top of the arm, then you potentially need to do a wide shoulder adjustment. The shoulder seam should be in line with the crease of your armpit. And of course, it should feel comfortable. I'm working on traced off copies of my new coping pattern. I've just put them into cards so that it's nice and clear for you to see compared to my background. And these patterns have seam allowances on them. Let's start by looking at a minor shoulder adjustment. If you need to remove or add up to 1.5 centimeters, 5/8 of an inch to your shoulder, you can complete it by simply making the adjustment at the end of the shoulder. Either measure in by the amount you require or measure out if you're completing a wide shoulder adjustment. For this example, I'll work with a wide shoulder adjustment and we will increase the shoulder size by 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch. We're going to increase the shoulder by that amount and then we're going to blend this back into the armhole, aiming for about a midway point using our French curve. You will complete the same adjustment on the front and on the back. Now you may find it easier to actually draw your stitching line onto your patterns here so that you get a nice connection at the shoulder and a nice shape to your armhole. And I recommend that you then connect your front and back together, check that the shoulders match and that there is a nice connection at the end of the shoulder. You want it to be straight for about 2 centimeters, 3/4 of an inch. You don't want to have a V shape at the top of the shoulder here. Remember that the shape of the armhole in the front and the back of the garment is different. The armhole in the front is generally more of a deeper, smoother curve, whereas the armhole in the back is straighter to start with and ends in a slight hook shape. If your shoulder adjustment is larger than 1.5 centimeters, 5/8 of an inch, then you can complete a more major adjustment. To do that, you're going to need to draw a line in the middle of the shoulder. And this is a vertical line that is parallel to the center front or center back and the grain line. You're also going to want to draw another line that's about midway in the armhole, and this is at a right angle to our center front, center back or grain line. Once you've drawn these two lines, you can then cut along the lines so that you can remove this pattern piece that includes the corner or end of the shoulder. Using this free pattern piece, you're going to want to keep it connected onto the horizontal line. You can then slide it towards the center front or center back to create a narrow shoulder adjustment, or towards the side seam to create a wide shoulder adjustment. It's a good idea to mark onto the pattern the amount of adjustment that you wish to complete. For this example, we will do 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch. I'm going to do a narrow shoulder adjustment, so I'm going to measure towards the center front, and I'm going to draw another line, another vertical line, 2.5 centimeters towards the center front. Then I can slide my little cutaway piece along the horizontal line until it meets the new vertical line. This is where I will tape it in position. I can then do exactly the same technique for the back, making sure you make the same adjustment. I'm removing 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch as a narrow shoulder adjustment and taping that in place. To finalize the pattern, you're going to need to reconnect the shoulder line. And we're connecting from where the shoulder meets the neck out to the end of the shoulder in a straight line. I'm presuming that you're happy with the pitch of the shoulder, so we're going to keep it as it is. And we would do the same for both the front and the back. The final step is, of course, to recurve the armholes. For ease, I would recommend that you mark the stitching line on the patterns, fold the seam allowance under of one pattern, and connect the patterns together along the stitching line at the shoulders. Using the French curve, you're going to connect from the new position at the end of the shoulder into about the midway point of the armhole. Now you want to aim for a nice shape to the curve, and you should find that you sort of lose some and gain some between the old and the new position of the pattern as you work around the curve. Now you may find that the French curve simply doesn't work for you, and you can often find that on the back armhole, in which case you can simply sketch this in by hand, aiming for a similar shape armhole to what the pattern had originally. The final step for both pattern adjustments is to measure the armhole. And you want to measure what this stitching line measures for the front of the pattern and the back of the pattern separately. And you're going to want to use a tape measure positioned on its end to get an accurate measurement of this curve. Now you could, if you'd measured this beforehand, or if you have the original pattern, you could measure what the armhole measured originally. And this would give you a good indication as to how much it's changed and whether you need to make any adjustments on the sleeve. Ideally, you shouldn't have changed the armhole too much by making these changes. But it can be good to grab your sleeve pattern and take a measurement of the stitching line on the front and on the back of the sleeve. Generally, for a basic bodice garment, I would aim for my sleeve to be in total 1 centimetre larger, 3/8 of an inch larger than my armhole. And that would be divided between the front and the back. So the front of the sleeve would be 5 millimetres, 1/4 of an inch larger than the front armhole. The back of the sleeve would be 5 millimetres, 1/4 of an inch larger than the back armhole. As long as the sleeve is the same size as the armhole or larger, then you're good to go. And of course, if you're able to measure your original armhole measurement, you'll know the difference between the original armhole and the sleeve, and you want to aim for something similar to that. Finalize your pattern, and always I would recommend that you make up a sample to check the fit. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this class, and don't forget to subscribe for more sewing tips.